You're going to love these Karen stories today, especially our title story. Here's the first one. Apologies for this being so long, but I've had to keep this story to myself for more than a decade. Ironically, a recent court ruling means I'm now free to discuss the details publicly for the first time without penalty. I'm starting with here. The background. I worked at a very big tech company for a very long time, like decades. Over the years, I'd worked my way up from being a noob to a kind of specialist fixer. I became fairly well known internally as a security and emergency response person. I got assigned the bad or unfixable projects, many of which made news headlines. I have many stories that I can never tell publicly, sadly. Suffice it to say that multiple senior vice presidents in various divisions got to know who I was because I effectively wrangled gnarly and complex problems and herded many intense tech nerds together to resolve big things in multiple divisions over the years. It was so fun. At the time of our story, I was working on a small security team in a product engineering division. It was a somewhat turbulent time, and our team of 8 had weathered multiple reorganizations and had so many manager changes. It was a lot, but we kept our heads down and we did the work, and we all got along just fine. Sidebar, and relevant later, that one of the better managers assigned to run our team immediately assigned me a huge and complicated and urgently important project to manage. It would involve people in 6 different divisions, had seriously big legal implications, and our senior VP wanted it to happen by an aggressive deadline within like 4 to 6 weeks. Oh, and my manager was leaving imminently on a long-planned vacation, so he apologetically would be away for the next 3 weeks and unable to assist. This project was to do something big and technical and which had never been done before, so no one was entirely sure how to do it, or who all it would require, or what steps in what order. Some of the key players had what we gently called difficult personalities too. And oh, by the way, it would definitely make international news and cause a ripple in the industry when we did it. No big whoop. Manager was a decent guy and he felt bad about leaving me with this thorny mess. And I did it. We got all the people from all the divisions in a room and mapped it all out on a whiteboard. It took days, and hashed out how to do it before the deadline. Actually, well before for bonus points. And we lined everyone up to get it done. Before we pulled the actual trigger on the very big thing, I had to attend a meeting with the VP and exec leadership, which was several levels of management above me, and with the legal team to present the plan and to assure all the execs that we were ready and had it all handled. So I looked the VP in the eye and assured him that I got this. And then I did. The team did the big thing sooner than the deadline. It was flawless. We rocked that. Woohoo, yeah, just another day at the office, right? The inept manager. A few months after that epic project, our good manager left us for another role and someone new moved over from an unrelated division out of nowhere. We'll call him Inept Manager. Inept Manager did not know anything about security. He didn't know anything about emergency response, and he didn't know anything about what our division did. In fact, no one on our team had ever heard of this guy. He was the worst kind of middle manager, self-important, dismissive of everyone, cares most about appearances and ego, micromanages stuff he doesn't comprehend, and just makes everything worse. But he apparently knows people, and those people get him job assignments because of politics, loyalty. He certainly didn't have any skills or experience for our team. Ugh, that guy was the worst. One of Inept Manager's many weird quirks was that he didn't think it was appropriate for our team to disagree with or correct each other in front of other people. Things in tech, specifically product development, move pretty quickly and things change all the time. So if some of our team was meeting with someone from another team and something was like, so we decided to make the sky green and we're on schedule. And someone else on our team chimed in to say, actually that's changed. We decided that the sky is now going to be blue and we pushed the deadline back 2 weeks. That just actually happened in an earlier meeting. Oh, okay, cool. Inept Manager would interrupt and say, we clearly need to get on the same page. Let's end this meeting right now and reschedule when my team has all the facts straight. What? That's insane! We'd literally never have any meetings if we waited until everyone knew all the same information all the time. Other teams would routinely leave meetings with us with inaccurate info which affected release schedules and resources, and it was just a mess. Inept Manager Hostility. Shortly after Inept Manager became our manager, he started being really hostile to me. Not to everyone on the team, just me. As far as I knew, I hadn't done or said anything to earn his hostility. Suddenly, after 20 plus years at this company, I could do nothing right. While this jerk didn't actually understand most of what my job was, he was sure I wasn't doing it right. And he was quick to tell me so, and often in front of others. To the point my coworkers would take me aside and ask me what the heck is going on. I didn't know either. The thing is, I was the only woman on the team, and I have a disability. Now, I've been through some things working in high tech over those decades. It was very much an old boys club back then, and I was fine. I'm not one to claim discrimination at the drop of a hat or for no reason. However, when I was trying to piece together the cause of this dude's hostility, some of his comments were sexist and not at all subtle. He also didn't like that due to my disability, and frankly, my seniority, I was given one of the few offices with a door on it in our new building. The rest of the team was in open floor plan cubicles, which everyone hated. He was incensed that I, a lowly direct report and woman, got an office and he didn't. I had more seniority than just about anyone, so even without my disability, I'd have scored the office ahead of him. Note that other men in our division got offices too, because again, seniority, and that bothered him less. But I was the only woman on our floor with a door, and I was his subordinate. His ego did not like it, not one bit. He threw a fit about it, repeatedly. There were lots of other things that he said. My favorite among them towards the end was him reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting that we had just had. Inept Manager told me beforehand not to say anything during that meeting because he was insisting on sharing incorrect information again, and he knew I'd want to correct it. So I sat quietly and kept my eyes on the PowerPoint presentation or the floor nearly the whole time. When I asked him how I'd had a bad attitude when I hadn't said anything, as he requested, I didn't like the look on your face. Okay, dude. After realizing there was nothing that I could do to make this guy happy with my work and to lose his hostility, I finally went to HR to go on the record. I knew they'd do crap all about it, but I wanted to document it at least. So, predictably, they told me to work harder at getting along with Inept Manager. And because it wasn't my first rodeo, I went back to my office and emailed HR saying, "Hey, thanks for the meeting with me about my concerns about Inept Manager. I fear his bias and misogyny will reflect negatively in my next performance review. HR should be aware that there is a real problem here, and I hope you'll take steps and blah 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 blah." Which of course, they didn't. But now it was on the record. The axe falls. And then a few months later, he gave me a terrible performance review, as expected. Long story already long, he was trying to fire me for underperformance. And unfortunately for me, the company had started rounds of layoffs all over, and it was the worst possible time to be looking for another job internally. And now I had a bad performance review on my record too. I went back to HR and said, "Hey, that last thing that I said, I was worried would happen when we met 6 months ago. That happened, exactly as I said. Now what?" HR, once again, was no help. Also, they'd done literally nothing. But hey, it was on the record, again, helpful for the attorney later. Blah, blah, blah. When I realized that I couldn't find a new gig at my company because of all the layoffs, I scored a new job for much more money at a different local tech company, and pretty quickly. I live in a tech-heavy area. There was lots of shuffling between 3 and 4 big companies during this time period. We'd often bump into each other like company veterans at these other companies. It was a small world. With my track record and references, it was super easy. After that was lined up, I called an employment discrimination attorney to negotiate my exit from the company that I thought I'd work at until I retired. Sad face. Because I had documentation with HR explaining Inept Manager's misogyny and ableism going back for some time, and because they'd done crap all about it, and because there were witnesses who confirmed his behavior, they had no leg to stand on. They agreed to write me a relatively nice check to go away and not to sue them, and I agreed to not talk about the details of my separation agreement. I went down to my lawyer's office and signed the agreement, and I looked to see who had signed the agreement for the company. I assumed it would be someone in HR, but it was still blank. I'd eventually get a copy once someone there signed it, so I took my check, I packed up my office, and left. Goodbye, old company. I started my new job a few weeks later. Karma begins. This was August of that year that I left. I got my copy of the executed contract in the mail in October. Who signed it for the company? Not HR, but my exec VP, the one who asked for the urgent, highly important, legally complicated project, the guy I looked in the eye personally and then delivered on this very big thing he personally asked for before the deadline he asked for. That is who signed off on my separation agreement. I suspect that he had no idea until that moment that I was gone. And I imagine that he likely had many questions about what the heck had happened. And also, why did they have to pay me a chunk of money on the way out? Whoops. I chortled when I saw it. Since the VP knew me and we had some history, and Inept Manager was new to the division and was one of the hundreds of middle managers he'd likely never heard of, I'm guessing Inept Manager had some explaining to do. I really enjoyed the thought of that. Karma for real. Cut to November. As I mentioned, it was a relatively small tech company in the area, and those of us who worked in security, in particular at Company X, would often encounter other current and former colleagues at Company Y or Z or whatever. Heck, there was a ton of poaching going on between the companies. One day, I got an in-company chat from someone who'd worked in security at my old company. We'll call her Security Colleague. Security Colleague asked me if I knew someone named Inept Manager. Why, yes, I did. Why? Because Inept Manager was appearing on Security Colleague's schedule to interview for an open management position the very next day. It seems that shortly after my former exec VP had signed my separation agreement contract, Inept Manager was actively looking for a new job at a new company. Security Colleague asked me what I thought about Inept Manager, and I said, I can't really talk about it for legal reasons, which, boom, everyone knows what that means. But if you wanted to ring my personal cell phone later this evening to catch up on old times, please do. She did. I hypothetically shared some stories with her about Inept Manager. I also told her where his hot buttons are, the appearance and ego thing, the dominant stuff, and so on and blah blah blah. And all about his misogyny and ableism, which was perfect since she was conducting his interview. I may have shared some specific scenarios and questions to ask, which I knew would set him off. I wished her luck, and for the love of all that is holy, please call me after, when appropriate, and tell me how it all went. It did not go well for Inept Manager. When Security Colleague rang me, I couldn't wait. How did it go? Well, he got combative and angry and yelled at me twice during his interview to be hired as a manager. There were lots more details now lost to time, except at that company, interview loops were assessed as such. You're either a strong hire for this role, a hire but not for this role, so it's not a good fit for this job but we like them, no hire, or no hire ever, not for any role. Inept Manager's interview was rated that last one, no hire ever. Blacklisted from any job ever at one of the biggest tech companies in the world, after being pushed out the door of one of the other biggest tech companies in the world. Derp. Shortly after that, it appeared that Inept Manager moved himself and his wife and kids a few states away to work at a smaller company in another region. It took less than 6 months from when I left my old company for him to be gone as well. What gets me still is that Inept Manager thought I was so inconsequential, so unimportant, that he didn't bother to check and see where I landed after he forced me out of the company I loved. And when he had to look for a job himself shortly thereafter, it also never occurred to him that I've had connections with, thousands of colleagues that I'd worked with over the years, some of whom can now be working at Company X or Y or Z, or where he was interviewing, and where I'd scored a huge raise for myself. To this day, he doesn't know why his interview at Company Y tanked so badly. And since Security Colleague was not legally precluded from sharing stories she had heard through the grapevine about Inept Manager's management problems, it's possible that other of our old security colleagues at Company Z and other companies in the area heard those stories too, which means he's unlikely to get a job at any major tech company in this area, maybe ever. Definitely not at X or Y, and they are big companies, among the biggest. And it's all because he's a butthole, ableist, misogynist middle manager who underestimated little old me. Many years ago, I worked for a company that hired an incredibly obtuse financial department who took over when they first organized. It used to be a loose collection of managers, but the year after I started, they went for a more organized and separate structure. To be fair, this is more about my boss than myself. We had a travel team, a group of volunteers from sales and IT who would go en masse with equipment and techs to do setups, displays, and network at trade shows. We had a booth, some sales guys would be there, and networking would commence. There was always a set of volunteers from the IT department because some of the shows would be in big cities, and you get to attend vendor events, parties, and hang out with the sales guys who were mostly gay alcoholics for some reason, and super fun. There was a kind of seniority to who got to volunteer, but nobody really complained, and everyone got rotated who got to go. You got to go to DEF CON last year, it's my turn now. Okay, fair. The travel team lead was also a volunteer position, but commonly someone high up, like a manager. Their job was to orchestrate equipment, rentals, expenses, travel plans, convention center fees, and shipping. They also ended up getting a lot of free stuff too from sales and our partners, which they pass along to the travel team. It was all kind of a perk, to be fair, for everyone involved, but when the new director of finance started, she put in some new and strict policies. Some of their policies started with 1. Travel team is not allowed to get reimbursed without explicit approval, and nobody was approved post-event. 2. Travel team does not get a credit card of their own, or even a company card. 3. Travel team gets gift cards for a set amount, like $150, which was to be used for all expenses. Sadly, places we needed it for, like airlines, rental agencies, and hotel rooms, gas pumps, and toll booths, do not accept gift cards. Finance denied these were gift cards and even specifically disallowed people in meetings to refer to them as such. Pre-approved credit balances, I think we had to say. But to the rest of the world, they were 100% exactly the same as gift cards with gift card restrictions. 4. No matter how early you asked for it, often finance waited until the very, very last minute, and usually after half a dozen reminders, to get anything approved, which incurred a lot of unnecessary cost like expedited shipping, same-day rental penalties, or inflated airfares. 5. If they forgot, it was your fault or your manager's fault for not reminding them enough. Okay, you reminded them 4 times to buy the team airline tickets and it wasn't done? Should have reminded them 5 times, so your fault. This was all in response to the Director of Finance's claim that it would, quote, reduce fraud, end quote, an issue that, as far as anyone could tell, had never happened. The director had this Dolores Umbridge approach that somebody, somewhere, might get away with something, and she was a patronizing git with a smug grin and this annoying head waggle when she downsplained something to you, so we'll call her Dolores. Before her, the travel team would just submit receipts and get reimbursed. Dolores put an end to that, specifically saying that the previous lead of the travel team was just going to spend all the money on steaks and wine. He, understandably, told her to go frick herself and quit the company when the dust settled. In his wake, Dolores used his free stuff from vendors as a shining example of stolen opulence and swag hoarding that she put an end to. Oh, behold the mighty on his throne of Airborne Express, stress squishies, and free Uline catalogs. That left my manager to take over his duties, and he'd never done travel team, so he wasn't really sure how it all worked and didn't push back on Dolores at first until he was forced to travel with the team. He was surprised that he didn't have an expense account or a corporate card, and when he asked for one, he got the gift card. When he tried to use it, it was rejected pretty much, everywhere that he needed it, except various restaurants. He paid for everything else on his personal American Express card, including stuff for the rest of the team, and was rejected for reimbursements because he didn't ask for it beforehand. He was on the hook for $40,000 in various things from 2-week-long trips. Of course, he complained to the top management. Dolores threatened to quit if she wasn't allowed to do her job, and the top managers never had to deal with her before and were kinda wishy-washy about being the bad guy here. Like, well, she says she lets you use gift cards, so... And when my manager said they were rejected, Dolores said he's not trying hard enough. He's afraid of confrontation. He needs to be a big boy and fight back. But in the end, the top management reimbursed him under pressure from the legal department. After that happened, Dolores settled on having certain things prepaid for, like hotel, travel, truck rentals, and shipping. But they waited so long to do them that they often tried to get hotel rooms or truck rentals the day of a popular event, sold out, or got the wrong hotel. Washington, D.C. is not the same as Washington State. Or waited so long for shipping that it cost $250 to send something overnight that would have cost $40 to send it a few weeks prior. They also didn't understand how much anything actually cost and how we saved money by doing things ourselves. And in some cases, finance did everything wrong, so the team would arrive at the right hotel and found out that finance didn't submit an authorized approval for a card for, say, like incidentals, a requirement for most hotels for trade shows. And nobody could reach them. So again, people got dinged on their personal cards. Again, Dolores said, they just can't accept what the hotel desk, convention center union, or dumb minimum wage bunny at the toll booth tells them. They have to fight back. We can't spoon feed them and coddle these guys because they are too scared of conflict. Ever fight with the Jersey Turnpike toll booth collector? Yeah, neither had she. After 2 of these disasters, my manager said, just stop. Stop volunteering for these events. I will not approve time off for it. He declined being travel lead for future trips because he just couldn't afford it. This was an unpopular move at best, but he told us, just wait, let her do things her way. He was a master at malicious compliance, and with no resistance, Dolores went into 5th gear with the smug grin. Now we're going to act like a real company. That leads to the next issue. Some of these travels were in major cities like Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C., and so on. Dolores, again, said that people were just going to these events to get the company to pay for a drinking vacation. Management was like, yeah, we wouldn't get volunteers otherwise. Well, Dolores didn't like that idea. So she decided that she would hold a staff lottery, and you could enter your name, and she'd have a drawing on who got to go to be fair to everyone. This fairness seems awfully slanted on her own staff, by the way, which we'll get to shortly. The point of these trade shows was not to take a vacation, something Dolores made absolutely sure to point out, but she didn't grasp the entire reason we went, to increase our business. It had to be IT folk for setup and sales folk for the schmoozing, but that concept never got past her ears into her cognitive understanding. Well, since those IT and tech folk who already couldn't go didn't want to pay for it, we didn't volunteer. So the travel team ended up being other company staff who had no idea how to work, act, or deal with trade shows, which was a horrific expense disaster. Imagine the administrative assistant for marketing on the 5th floor winning a ticket only to find out that she had to pay for everything. Plus, Dolores always sent one of her own to keep an eye on everyone, but none of them knew how trade shows worked either. They only knew how to kowtow to Dolores and her control issues. What's a union fee? What's corkage? No, we didn't approve some union to give us power. You plug your booth stuff into an outlet or something. They won't let you. Who's they? Well, then stop using TV screens in the booth. You don't need them. We don't sell TVs anyway. Did you know that if you have a conflict with an event center union and decline their help, they charge you anyway at the max rate? Yeah, Dolores and her team didn't know that either. And let me tell you, paying those guys a few $1,000 ahead of time is a lot cheaper than just letting them charge you fines afterwards. Oh, she tried to fight back because she was not afraid of a little conflict, but lost heavily. Ironically, despite Dolores stating otherwise at great length, the non-IT or salespeople who actually went thought it was company-paid vacation-ish, just like Dolores warned about, making it kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact that they had to work was surprising at first. Then, after that got word out, nobody would enter into the lottery, so now they had no volunteers. So, Dolores assigned them to interns. Interns. I could write an entire novel from that disaster alone. Imagine sending a bunch of college kids to Vegas, telling them they had to pay for things and putting them in a job conflict situation where they were guaranteed to lose. I'm sure many laws were broken. Dolores then had to send along chaperones to manage it, who were more of their finance department flunkies, and our company ended up with massive fines for various issues, including paying bail for the interns. Because the interns got into so much trouble, Dolores started hiring room monitors for the hotels, and fully legal adults had to go to the show, work the entire day at the show on their feet, and then check back into their room. She also put 4 to 6 people to a room too, like they were a high school band or something. She even had breathalyzers brought in for it to make sure that nobody was drinking. Adults. She treated adults like this. This was brought up by my sales teams as a PR nightmare, and my boss said, just wait, okay? Let her hang herself. The first year of this, the travel team's expenses increased by over 4,000%. You heard me. 4,000%. Trips that used to cost $3,600 were now costing $144,000 or more, often because of late-minute fees and penalties. The travel team expenses went from $110,000 annual on average to over 2-point-something million. Because crap was so badly mishandled, we lost a lot of our booth slots and booth renewals, so we lost like half our trade shows and looked like idiots to our clients. But the main reason we went to those trade shows in the first place was for networking, so there was literally no reason to go anymore. This was pointed out to Dolores multiple times by the sales team, so she doubled down and canceled the travel team after just 1 year. Finally, top management got involved, who actually fought with Dolores for a year until she retired for personal reasons and to dedicate herself to her family. Then it took nearly 2 years to rebuild the travel team from scratch. People got corporate cards, travel team lead became an actual job, and when we hired one, she handled all the financial stuff for us, so it was much better, and it saved the company a ton of money in her first year. And there was much rejoicing. Update. Question says, you're really talking about some name, aren't you? The answer, there's a lot of Dolores Umbridges out there apparently. Only 3 people, former coworkers, got it right. Question was, why was she not fired when spending went from $110,000 to $2.1 million? Answer is, well, several reasons, the biggest being that she was director of finance, so I'm sure that when she gave her fiscal report, she downplayed the mistakes. We also had some really good years in the early 2000s, so if we made $2 million in profit the previous year and $3 million the next, that loss would have gone unnoticed until someone realized that we should have made $6 million instead. That's my theory, at any rate, based on the aftermath. Dolores was friends of 2 of the top managers and supposedly had a come-to-Jesus meeting with them about the state of our company's financial standings, so that's why they hired her in the first place. By the second year, several directors had quit, including friends of the top management who took them for drinks later and got the entire scoop. Dolores has got to go. The trade show thing was only one of the cases that she screwed things up. She also completely hosed one of our major supply chains by lowballing them, and making a few enemies that nearly destroyed the company, and gave away some of our more lucrative contracts with vendors to competitors because that broke their anti-competitive clauses. There were more issues, but that comes closer to identifying some people, which is a huge no-no here. Question is, what happened to the Christmas party? Answer. The Christmas party wasn't nearly as interesting. She just didn't have one. This was near the tail end of the whole, now we're going to run this like a real company fiasco, but once the budget for events was $2.1 million from $110,000, the Christmas party was probably far down her list of worries. I don't even think she knew she was supposed to have one. Some people think that she was funneling that money to cover up the massive expense increase for the trade show fiascos, but I can't imagine that those budgets were from the same pool. I think around November, people started asking, don't they have a holiday party every year? But nobody knew who was doing it. Usually IT, the 3 people who were a huge part of it in previous years, were no longer with the company. They had quit, mostly because of Dolores. But even they didn't run it per se, they hired and catered it out at some fancy hotel locally. Our fiscal year was January to December, so December was huge for tying things up, and this was her first year running fiscal year-end stuff. She came on board late in the previous year, and so the finance would have been normally very occupied anyway. Question is, how was she let go? The answer, she just gained too many enemies in the company. It took a while, but after she had been with us for a year and a half, she accumulated too much negative drag on her inertia to get things done because there started to be a very strong passive resistance. This caused her to spiral out of control and try to start a coup which gained no traction and singled her out as being mildly unhinged, to say the least. By the time her second anniversary came and went, she started taking sabbaticals until one of them became permanent. Her assistant took over, but then was let go, and they brought in some consultant group who started a new financial team. They were the ones that suggested someone have the table team lead as an actual separate paid job. The woman who got hired and ran that was amazing. Question is it true that she tried to sell keychains and pins? Answer is, no one asked this, but a former coworker reminded me that she was appalled that we were just giving away some of our normal booth freebies like stickers and pins and shirts and keychain flashlights. She demanded we charge at least a nominal fee for them, but if I remember correctly, nobody followed that mandate. I only personally know that she sent out a memo admonishing employees that a lot of the keychains went missing and she was seeing them on people's desks. Those cost the company money and wanted to charge employees $3 for them. But apparently, she wanted to charge people at the booth as well. HOA secrets exposed, tax evasion, fraud, and extortion. How I uncovered it. Find out how by clicking on the video on the screen. You don't want to miss this story, and I will see you there.